Imagine having a sworn enemy, that one person who annoys you just by breathing near you. Now, imagine that, out of nowhere, you two end up married and even have to live together. Well, that's exactly what happened to Saito. In the middle of high school, he's walking through the school hallways toward his classroom. But before he can enter, Akane, a very beautiful girl, appears in his path. And she's not there to be friendly, far from it. She grabs his tie and, with a sharp glare, gives him a warning. If he tells anyone about their marriage, he will regret it. Yes, they just got married. And the worst part, Akane is, without a doubt, the most unbearable person in the entire school for Saito. 4 days before this tense moment, the two were already at each other's throats. Akane scolded Saito because he wrote in the class log that nothing important happened. To her, this proved that he had no commitment, but Saito didn't care. To make things worse, she also got mad at him for not erasing the blackboard at the end of the day and leaving a Chinese proverb about demons written on it. To him, it was just another meaningless thing. As they argued, Himari, a blonde and super kind girl, stepped in to defend Saito, but Akane wouldn't back down, insisting that he was irresponsible and disrespectful. Himari, however, noticed something interesting. Akane seemed obsessed with Saito. That caught Akane off guard, but the truth was, just looking at him made her want to punch him. In the middle of this chaos, Shisei, Saito's cousin, appeared. She was so adorable that all the girls in class admired her. Seeing them arguing, she asked if they were fighting again. Saito tried to defend himself, saying it wasn't even a real fight. Akane just picked on him for no reason. Shisei comforted her cousin, while Himari jokingly suggested that maybe Akane had feelings for him. But the idea was so ridiculous to both of them that they denied it immediately. To them, even if the world ended, they would never be together. After school, Saito got a call from his grandfather Hojo asking to see him. Saito refused, but his grandfather didn't take no for an answer. After all, Saito was the heir to the family's massive company. Since he refused to go willingly, Hojo sent his men to pick him up by force. Inside the car, Saito asked where they were taking him, but the driver remained silent, following his grandfather's orders. He then learned that the company had almost gone bankrupt in the past, but his grandfather turned things around, transforming the business into a tech empire. And now, Hojo was still in control of everything. When Saito arrived at his grandfather's house, he was in for a surprise. Akane was there too. Confused, she asked what he was doing there. Saito replied that he had been forced to come, and guess what? Akane's grandmother had done the exact same thing to her. Already annoyed just by being in the same place, the two started bickering again. But soon, a luxurious car pulled up, and inside were their grandparents, who clearly had big plans for them. The grandparents had something big in mind. As soon as they entered the house, they were greeted with a celebratory feast. But Akane, looking displeased, only drank water, saying she lost her appetite just by being near Saito. Never missing a chance to tease, he remarked that she must have some kind of special pheromone that makes people lose their hunger. Instead of scolding them for their childish argument, the grandparents just laughed, reminiscing about their own youth. Saito, already losing patience, asked why they were there. And then came the bombshell: the grandparents wanted them to get married. Both of them were shocked. The grandparents explained that they had met in high school and loved each other, but because of silly fights, they never ended up together. Now, they wanted to unite their grandchildren to fulfill the love that never happened. Of course, Akane and Saito immediately rejected the idea. They said no one could force them to marry. But Grandpa Hojo had a plan. He brought out a stray dog and declared that if Saito refused the marriage, he would leave the entire company and all his assets to the dog. Saito was outraged and called his grandfather crazy, but Hojo was willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. Meanwhile, Grandma Chio pulled Akane aside and whispered something in her ear. Whatever she said was so terrifying that Akane's face turned pale instantly. Then, Grandpa Hojo gave them an ultimatum. They had 3 days to decide what to do. On their way out of the house, Akane asked Saito if he really intended to marry her. Saito didn't know what to say, and instead asked what his grandmother had told her to make her so nervous. But Akane refused to tell him. He insisted, but she remained silent. That night, Akane lay in bed, lost in thought, remembering the day she got furious after Saito surpassed her in the school rankings. Feeling confused, she called Himari and asked what she would do if she were forced to marry someone she didn't like. Himari answered without hesitation that she would refuse because she already liked someone else. Akane was surprised and wanted to know who it was. Suspicious, Himari said she couldn't reveal it just yet. Then, Himari asked if Akane liked someone. Akane replied that she just wanted someone to disappear from the face of the earth, which would solve all her problems. Jokingly, she said that if she met that person right now, she'd punch them in the head. Laughing, Himari suggested that Akane should accept the marriage since it might be fun. But Akane didn't think that was a good enough reason. She was still worried about certain things that came with marriage. Himari agreed and jokingly suggested that she just have 20 sets of quintuplets. Akane, outraged, said her body wouldn't survive something like that. Meanwhile, Saito was also deep in thought. Marrying Akane seemed like a massive mistake. Shisei noticed his concern and asked what was wrong. Saito explained that if he wanted to inherit the Hojo company, he'd have to accept that his grandfather would control his life. Already used to her grandfather's absurdity, Shisei asked what he truly wanted. Saito replied that he wanted the company, but he also wanted his freedom. Shisei sat on Saito's lap and told him that no one can have everything in life, that everyone is bound by a world full of rules. Jokingly, she said that if he decided to give up the company for freedom, freedom, she'd be willing to become a beggar, and they could search through trash for food together. Saito laughs but knows that's not an option. Shisei understands that he needs the company to achieve his dreams and promises not to stand in his way. Still, she assures him that he can always count on her. The next day, Saito meets with Akane to discuss an agreement. 3 days later, they go to their grandparents to give their decision. To their surprise, they both accept the marriage. Neither of them knew the other would make this choice, but each, in their own way, realized it was the best path. Saito assumes the wedding will happen after graduation, but his grandfather quickly corrects him the ceremony will be immediate. Not only that, but a house has already been arranged for them. With no way out, the young couple is taken to their new Homea, freshly built and fully furnished house. To make matters worse, all their belongings have already been moved there, and the entire marriage process is finalized. There's no escaping now. The grandparents say their goodbyes and leave, ignoring Akane's protests as she desperately begs her grandmother to take her back. But it's no use. Now, the two are alone in the house. As soon as they step inside, Saito locks the door. Akane panics and accuses him of wanting to kidnap her and do indecent things. Annoyed by the absurd accusation, he explains that the door can be opened from the inside. To prove it, Akane opens it and steps out for a moment. They explore the house and find several boxes with their belongings. Everything is perfectly arranged, and despite her reluctance, Akane can't hide her excitement. But she quickly remembers that the only problem with this perfect house is Saito. He fires back, saying she ruined his dream of having a bachelor pad. While checking out the bathroom, they come across a huge heart-shaped jacuzzi, which makes them both extremely uncomfortable, especially Akane. Meanwhile, Saito finds an office, which he plans to use as a way to escape his grandmother's watchful eyes. Suddenly, a scream comes from the master bedroom. Saito rushes in and finds Akane frozen in shock, staring at a single bed. Furious, Saito calls his grandfather to complain, but he gets a blunt response. That's marriage! They can't sleep on the couch or the floor, they have to share the bed. Meanwhile, Grandma Chio wishes her granddaughter good luck with the married couple things she'll be doing that night. Akane is horrified, insisting that she'll never do anything like that. Meanwhile, Saito starts to suspect that there might be cameras or sensors in the house, monitoring their every move. Terrified, Akane stares at Saito and nervously asks, "You're not going to try anything with me, are you?" Saito has no idea what she's talking about. She crosses her arms and says she's already noticed how he looks her up and down, accusing him of having impure thoughts all the time. But she won't allow any of that, not a chance. With a pencil in hand, she threatens him. Saito, outraged, insists he would never do such a thing, but before he can explain, Akane dashes out of the room. Later, he finds her carrying boxes to the bedrooms and offers to help. Akane immediately refuses, convinced that he just wants an excuse to take her to the bedroom and do indecent things. Tired of arguing, Saito simply tells her to be careful, but the next moment, Akane trips on the stairs. Luckily, Saito catches her just in time. Akane thanks him, but quickly remembers who he is and takes it back. Saito jokes that if she had died on their first day of marriage, he would have been the prime suspect. Foreseeing the chaos, their grandfather had left dinner ready for their first night. Saito heats up his food and starts eating. Akane glances at his pizza, unable to hide her craving. Noticing this, Saito offers her a slice. Akane explodes, saying they shouldn't act like a couple. Saito replies that one doesn't need to be married to share a meal, but Akane suspects ulterior motives. She thinks he wants to eat her in the literal sense. Annoyed, Saito simply pushes a slice toward her and tells her to stop imagining nonsense. Akane grabs the pizza and runs out of the kitchen. That night, Saito finally collapses onto the bed, exhausted. Moments later, Akane enters the bedroom, clearly uncomfortable. She lies down on her side of the bed and realizes how small it is. Saito suspects the bed size was part of their grandparents' plan. He feels the warmth of Akane's body and even catches a hint of her perfume. Suspicious, Akane threatens him if he tries anything. Then, blushing, she admits that she has never dated anyone before. To her surprise, Saito confesses that he doesn't have any experience either. In a way, this makes them both feel slightly more at ease. Curious, Saito asks again why Akane agreed to marry him, but she refuses to answer. She says it's just a formality, and she'll follow the rules, no matter how much she hates it. After all, she's determined to achieve her dream no matter the cost. This makes Saito worried. What if one of the rules is that they have children? Akane's eyes widen, and she jumps out of bed, accidentally hitting her waist against Saito's hand. Furious, she threatens to break his finger. Saito tries to defend himself, saying it was her own fault. And so, their first day of marriage comes to an end. Now we return to the beginning of the story. At school, Akane threatens Saito not to tell anyone about their marriage. He agrees, but she fears he'll spread rumors that they sleep in the same bed. Saito assures her he would never do that. Akane believes him, but just to be safe, she decides to record his oath. And if he breaks his promise, she'll expose everything to the world. If you made it this far, comment Exquisito below. Huge thanks, and see you in the next video.
Don't mention the word marriage, Akane ordered Saito, leaving no room for discussion. She didn't want to take even the slightest risk, and he understood. He accepted, but it didn't take long for Himari to enter the room with that suspicious look on her face. "What were you two talking about?" she asked, glancing between them. It sounded like a fight. Akane, quick on her feet, responded, "I told him never to talk to me again." A simple but effective lie. Meanwhile, Saito returned to his desk, but he barely had time to breathe before Shisei approached. She wrinkled her nose and raised an eyebrow. "New shampoo?" Without giving him a chance to answer, she narrowed her eyes. "Where did you spend the night?" Saito tried to lie. "My dad bought a new shampoo." But Shisei wasn't easy to fool. Besides the shampoo scent, she picked up something else. The perfume of a girl. As if that wasn't enough, she stepped closer and bit his neck. Without hesitation, she confronted him. "I know you got married. While investigating your grandfather, I found out everything." With no way out, Saito pulled her into the hallway. Shisei was furious. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" And of course, she wouldn't miss the opportunity to take advantage. "If you want my silence, you'll have to pay." Saito sighed. "How much?" Shisei smirked. "I haven't decided yet. I'll let you know later." And she made it very clear. His life was now in her hands. Back in the classroom, Akane was already on Saito's case, this time about PE class. "You didn't put the equipment away." Saito rolled his eyes. "I talked to the teacher. I left everything there because it will be used in the next class." Akane crossed her arms. "And what if a meteor falls and class gets cancelled? During the evacuation, someone could trip over the stuff you left lying around." Their classmates sighed. Here they went again. Himari, laughing, explained to the newcomers, "These fights are legendary. They argue like a newlywed couple all the time." Akane exploded. "We are not married." But when she got home, chaos. She opened the fridge and screamed, "What is this?" Saito walked into the kitchen, completely calm. "Concentrated vegetables, full of vitamins. We'll never get sick." Akane glanced at the pantry and saw stacks of instant noodles. "And where's the protein?" "We make protein shakes with the vegetable juices," Saito explained as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "It's the most practical way to eat." Akane was horrified. "You only eat artificial, tasteless food." Saito nodded proudly. "I trained my palate to accept it." Akane sighed. If things continued like this marriage wouldn't last. Not that she wanted it to last, of course, but she couldn't allow this ridiculous situation to continue. So, she decided, she would cook a homemade dinner, and he would have to compliment her. Saito eyed the plate suspiciously. "Are you sure this isn't poisoned?" He took a cautious bite. But as the flavor hit him, flashes of the past came rushing back, memories of his parents abandoning him and being adopted by his grandfather. Akane, anxious, asked, "Well, what do you think?" Saito, emotionless. "It's passable." Akane was livid. "Then give it to the stray dogs." She grabbed the plate to throw the food away, but Saito was faster. He held it firmly and devoured everything before she could take it. She was furious. "I curse you for eternity." Inside, Saito smiled. He had never eaten anything so good, and he had never been cursed for liking a meal. The next morning, Akane tried to wake Saito, but still half asleep, he mistook her for Shijo. Half drowsy, he pulled her close and mumbled, "Let's sleep just a little longer." Before Akane could react, she was already lying beside him. For a brief moment, her brain froze. And then, Saito, the thunderous scream made him jump awake. "You didn't wash the dishes after I cooked." Saito yawned and shrugged. "Just use another plate. I'll wash them when there are none left." But Akane wasn't having it. She dragged him to the sink and only rested when the dishes were sparkling clean. But of course, she didn't stop there. And this mess in the bathroom? Exhausted, Saito threw out an absurd suggestion. "What if I just took out the trash once a month?" Akane was in shock. "I'm living with a pig." "You're just obsessed with cleanliness," he shot back. "And since we're on the subject, I don't like it when you force me to shower every day." That was too much for Akane. "This isn't happening," she murmured, holding back tears. Saito, now serious, crossed his arms. "Only call me if it's something important." On the way to school, Akane reflected. They were so different. Could they really keep going like this? Later that day, when he got home, Saito decided to relax. He turned on his zombie game and threw himself onto the couch. Akane walked out of her room with a disapproving look. "Can you lower the volume? I'm trying to study." But when she looked at the screen, her eyes widened. "What is that?" "You've never seen a zombie game?" Saito asked, eyes still glued to the screen. "That's way too violent. People who play this stuff turn into criminals." Saito scoffed. "That's just pure prejudice." Out of patience, Akane tried to snatch the controller from his hands. "Not in my house." They started wrestling over the controller until ding dong. The doorbell. Akane suddenly let go, making Saito lose his balance and stumble. The television screen went black. Game disconnected. Match lost. She opened the door and announced, "Your stuff arrived." But Saito remained frozen in place, devastated. His game was dead. Hours later, still resentful, he decided to take a bath to relax before the next round of war against Akane. But when he opened the bathroom door, he froze. The bathtub was occupied. Akane. Saito quickly shut the door, ready to walk away, but something made him hesitate. She didn't notice? What if she had passed out? Concerned, he knocked on the door. "Hey, you still alive in there?" No response. Akane, total silence. Now imagining the worst, he stepped inside. But no, she hadn't passed out. She was asleep. He sighed in relief. But sleeping in the bathtub was dangerous. If she slipped, Saito stepped closer to wake her. But before he could touch her, he heard something unexpected. Saito, go sleep in the doghouse. She was dreaming. He rolled his eyes. Even in her sleep, she treats me like this. But then, Akane shifted, lost her balance, and before Saito could react, she fell right on top of him. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed. She saw Saito there, with her, in the bathroom. And it clicked. You pervert. 2 seconds later, Saito was thrown out the door. He tried to explain. I only went in because I thought you had passed out. But Akane wasn't listening. What did you see? He looked away, trying not to make it worse. Bad move. Did you see something nice? Saito swallowed hard. Akane exploded with rage. Later that night, as she got ready for bed, she was still fuming over what had happened. This guy is going to be the death of me. Akane was upset about everything, but then again, what if Saito was just trying to help? With that thought in mind, she went to the bed where he was, reading in silence. She lay down next to him with Duel in her arms, and tried to bring up the subject again, but Saito didn't even want to listen. She sighed, feeling that tightness in her chest. In the end, she fell asleep, feeling sad and helpless. The next day, Himari noticed right away. Akane had a terrible look on her face. What happened? She asked, concerned. And that was all it took for Akane to break down. She started crying, venting that there was someone she just couldn't get along with, but she wanted to try. Himari, sharp as always, understood immediately. It's Saito, isn't it? Of course not, Akane retorted immediately, but Himari just smiled. Oh, please. Since the first year, I've seen how he catches your attention. Me? With him? Never! Himari laughed at her friend's stubbornness, but decided not to insist. Instead, she suggested something unexpected. Why don't you give him a hug? Akane was horrified. That's never going to happen. All right. Then at least try talking to him in a different way. Without fighting, you know. Easy for you to say, Akane murmured. You're good with people. Everyone likes you. Not everyone. Himari shrugged. Some people just don't click, and that's okay. The important thing isn't making others like us, but respecting them. Meanwhile, Saito was having lunch with Shiho, who quickly noticed that he looked like he was in a bad mood. What happened now? I'm fed up with this marriage. Anytime now, Akane and I are going to blow up for good. Shiho, ever practical, suggested, then get a divorce. Saito scoffed. And throw all my effort to inherit the Hoyo group down the drain? No way. Then stop fighting with her and make the marriage work. It's impossible. We're complete opposites. Shiho rolled her eyes. Saito, humans are animals, and when it comes to compatibility, sometimes it's just about laziness. Stop running away and try to find a middle ground with her. Learn to understand how she feels. Saito thought about it. Shiho could be a bit sarcastic, but she was right. By the way, Shiho smiled. Carry me in your arms. What? Come on. Any girl would melt with that. Saito didn't even know what to say. Later, when he got home, Saito was even willing to talk to Akane, but was met with an even angrier version of her. Bad sign. Immediately, he thought, forget it. Better try another day when she's not so mad. Asterisk. But before he could escape, Akane blocked the way. We need to talk. Saito held his breath. Great. It's the divorce. Asterisk. But then Akane said something that caught him off guard. I want to try to understand you. I want this to work. They both sat at the table, each with a cup of tea. Akane sighed before speaking. Saito, I hate you. Great start. But, she continued, ignoring the comment, I think we need to sort some things out. Since we got married, I've been doing everything in the house by myself. Saito crossed his arms. I've already said, I prefer to wash clothes and dishes when there's a good pile. That attracts pests. It's nature. It's disgusting. It spreads germs, Saito. You're going to catch a disease. He was about to argue back, but then remembered what Shiho had said about trying to find a middle ground. He sighed and, for the first time, gave in. Fine. I'll wash the dishes after I use them. Akane blinked, surprised. Really? Yes. She was so shocked that she forgot to retort. Maybe, just maybe, this marriage had a chance. Akane took a deep breath before asking, do you have any requests? Anything you want to change? I promise I'm willing to listen. Saito thought for a moment and finally said, yes. I wish you were more patient when we bump into each other in bed. Akane immediately blushed. So you want me to just ignore your abuses? What? No, that's not it. Saito sighed. The bed is tiny. I can barely move. It's inevitable that we'll touch each other. Akane crossed her arms, suspicious. Okay. But if I feel a hand where it shouldn't be, you'll see. Deal made. Then it was Akane's turn to make a request. When you're playing, playing, use headphones, and play far from me. I don't want to see anything. Saito rolled his eyes, but agreed. Gradually, they both started setting rules for their cohabitation. Then Saito remembered something. Couples get along better when they make a point of thanking each other. How about we try that? Akane agreed immediately. Great idea. Then you can start by complimenting my cooking, even if it's not good. Yes, Saito scratched his head, but I called your cooking mediocre as a compliment. Akane was completely confused. Before bed, she decided to call Himari and tell her everything. Congrats, girl. You're heading in the right direction. Akane smiled, but when she heard Saito's footsteps approaching, she quickly ended the call. When he entered the room, Akane was already lying down, visibly embarrassed. You can touch wherever you want. Saito choked. What? She stared at him. I meant if it's by accident. The next day, Saito returned home with Shiho. Things have improved a little, he admitted, but this battle isn't over. Shiho laughed. Why don't you try playing around with her a bit? You're so vulgar, Saito retorted. By the way, I need you to do me a favor. Later, when Saito got home, he handed Akane a strawberry cake, her favorite. The girl's eyes widened. How did you know? Saito shrugged. You wrote that in your essay from the first year? Akane blinked, surprised. She didn't even remember that. Sorry, Saito said, a bit embarrassed. I have a talent for remembering useless things. Akane looked at the cake and then at him. Thank you. Later, they sat down to have dinner. Akane had really put effort into the food, and Saito couldn't deny it. It was good. When they finished, he offered to wash the dishes, but to his surprise, Akane came closer and said, Need help? Saito furrowed his brows. Why are you being nice to me? Akane huffed. I just want to help, idiot. He hesitated, but eventually accepted. And then he realized something. For the first time, as he saw her smile up close, he noticed how beautiful Akane was. Saito was chilling in the living room, reading. When Akane showed up with that look, that meant she wanted to ask for something. Before he could say anything, she got straight to the point. Should I finish the book? He didn't even have to think. Number. Curious, he asked what she wanted. With a small grin, Akane revealed that she had rented a movie and wanted to watch it. Saito shrugged and said he'd leave so she could enjoy it. But then came the surprise. Watch it with me? He hesitated, but she was already showing him the cover. It was a documentary with a runtime of 24 hours. Saito's eyes widened. Not even anime marathons last that long. Akane laughed and explained that there was a shorter version, only 3 hours long. Saito sighed in relief and agreed. During the movie, Akane was mesmerized by the cute cats, while Saito was struggling to stay awake from boredom. When it finally ended, Akane thanked him for the sacrifice and suggested he pick the next movie. I'd rather play video games, he shot back. Oh no, I don't get those things, she replied. Then I'll teach you. She agreed, albeit reluctantly, and half an hour later, she was completely destroying him in the game. Saito stared at the screen, unable to believe he was experiencing this moment with the most annoying girl in school. Later that night, as he was about to sleep, Saito noticed that Akane wasn't covered. Almost instinctively, he pulled the blanket over her. Thanks, Akane murmured, surprising him. She was awake. Before he could leave, she added, Oh, and start calling me by my real name, okay? The next day at school, Saito was dozing off at his desk when Akane picked up his fallen eraser and handed it back. He thanked her without thinking, but then Himari appeared, looking curious. Huh? You guys aren't fighting? Of course not, Akane replied, but her voice sounded a little nervous. Himari raised an eyebrow. That's weird. You two are always arguing. Now you almost seem like friends. Friends? Me and Saito? Never. Akane shot back, trying to hide her nerves. But Himari had already noticed something interesting. Akane was calling Saito by his name now. Oh, since when? Akane froze. Her excuse came instantly. I have to go home. What? Himari laughed. We just got here, covered his eyes from behind. If you guess who it is, you win a prize, he sighed. Only you would do something this childish, Shiza. She laughed and said she just wanted to help him rest his eyes. Then, she noticed the title of the book he was holding. It was about improving communication. Saito explained that he wanted to get along better with Akane, and had read that teamwork helped build bonds. Oh, I see. You like her, don't you? Shiza teased. He ignored her and went straight to find Akane. Got plans after school? I'm not interested. We're going shopping. Improvised. Nothing like that. We just need to buy some things for the house. Akane thought for a moment, then smiled. Oh, if it doesn't count as a date, then I'm in. Burst into laughter. After school, Akane was getting ready to meet Saito when Himari suddenly appeared beside her. Want to walk home together? Akane froze. Would she be able to shake her off before she found out her secret? Akane looked at Himari and asked suspiciously, Weren't you supposed to be working? Important thing is that this happened at the perfect time, because now I can take you to try the best ice cream in town. Akane made a face. I already have plans. Himari raised an eyebrow. Oh? Found yourself a new friend? Of course not. I'm going out with someone you already know. Himari, who was sharper than a drama series detective, figured it out instantly. You have a date with Saito. What? Never! Akane got so flustered that she bolted like she had just seen La Llorona herself. The problem was that in her escape, she stepped right on Shisei, who, as always, was lying on the ground for no apparent reason. What are you doing sprawled out here? Akane grumbled, not even bothering to apologize. Shisei lazily opened one eye and responded like some kind of mystical entity after stepping on me. Big deal, Akane scoffed. For this feat, I grant you a legendary sword to aid you on your journey. Akane sighed. Go take a bath with your otaku nonsense. Before she could leave, Ishizu suddenly appeared and asked a strange question. Do you like teamwork? Akane frowned. Depends. Why? Just curious. Ishizu replied with a sly smile. What kind of teamwork are you planning to do with Saito? Confused. What? What kind of question is that? Ishizu just shrugged. Akane huffed and walked away. She waited for Saito at their meeting spot, and for the first time started to feel nervous. Was this an actual date? Before she could spiral into that thought, Saito arrived, and the two headed out for shopping. At the supermarket, Saito picked up a carton of eggs and placed it in the cart. Akane narrowed her eyes and held it up. Same eggs, Saito. Just cheaper. He shrugged. All right, you pick. Further ahead, they spotted a sale on chicken breast. Akane handed her bags to Saito and charged straight into the crowd to fight for the prized chicken. She lost badly. Seeing her struggle, Saito, in a burst of bravery, went to back her up. The result? Both of them walked away empty-handed and completely defeated. Even so, they burst into laughter. All right, I admit it. Today was a disaster, Akane said, rubbing her sore arm. But one day, I'll be back for revenge. If you can count, don't count on me, Saito retorted. Akane pouted and gave him the classic emotional blackmail look. Fine, I'll go, but just this once. Later that night at home, Akane woke up in the middle of the night and saw something strange. Saito was standing there, his hand slightly reaching toward her. Hey, are you touching my goods? She asked, startled. Saito quickly backed away. What? No, you hugged me in your sleep. Well, you did. She crossed her arms. Okay, and what were you doing before I woke up? Saito was silent for a second, then confessed bluntly. Just looking at you. Akane's eyes widened, red instantly. How cute. Saito smiled. Very. She turned away and muttered, fine, you can look but not for too long. Otherwise, it gets weird. The next day, the atmosphere between them was off. Awkward, nervous, like the night before had messed with something. Saito was in the bathroom washing his face when he suddenly heard a scream. He ran to see what was wrong and found Akane staring at the frying pan, horrified. What happened? Is gone. Saito narrowed his eyes. You're acting weird today. Me? Weird! She let out a nervous laugh, then pointed at him. You're the one without a shirt! Saito glanced down at himself, shrugged, and went back into the bathroom. Later, on the way to school, Akane suddenly had a craving. I want a sweet bun. Without saying anything, Saito bought one for her. When she saw the size of it, Akane's eyes widened. It's huge. He laughed. We can share. And just like that, without overthinking it, the two of them ate together, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The moment was peaceful, until Himari showed up to ruin everything. It was the first time she'd seen the two of them together outside of school, so she crossed her arms and asked, Huh? You guys are going somewhere together? Akane, never one to miss a chance to be dramatic, pointed at Saito. Of course not. This weirdo has been following me for ages. Call the cops. Himari raised an eyebrow. Then why are you sharing food? As if disgusted. This filthy guy picked up a piece that fell on the ground and started eating it. Saito was outraged. Hey, I'm not a dog. The two of them automatically started bickering while Himari just stood there, watching like she was witnessing a live reality show. Tried to intervene. You're overdoing it. The test is gonna be easy. Akane stopped for a second and looked at him. Easy for you, huh? The guy who doesn't study and still gets a perfect score. He shrugged. I just remember what they say in class. Turned with a strawberry sandwich. Eat this. Akane accepted reluctantly, but after the first bite, her eyes widened. This is really good. Obviously, I made it. Then they headed to school. In the hallway, out of nowhere, Akane suddenly collapsed onto the floor. Himari quickly crouched down to check on her. She fell asleep. Lee opened one eye. I studied so much. I didn't sleep at all. Himari sighed. Score no matter what. Himari helped her up and muttered, but you'll never score higher than Saito. Akane clenched her fists. I'll surpass him, and then he'll have to acknowledge my superiority. Himari rolled her eyes, touching her shoulder. She slowly opened her eyes and tried to keep studying, but he noticed her face was burning up. He placed a hand on her forehead. You're on fire! Before she could protest, he carried her to bed and started placing cold compresses on her forehead. You made yourself sick from overworking, he said. Even with a fever, Akane tried to argue. I can't stop. I have to study. Saito sighed. You're just gonna make it worse. She turned her head away, reluctant, then murmured, I want to be a doctor. I want to help people who need it, but I don't have the money to get into a good university. My grandma said she'd pay for it if I married you. Saito was speechless. It frustrates me. He crossed his arms. Some people are just born with talent, but you were just born, huh? Akane was outraged. I admire you. Silence filled the room. Akane realized what she had just said and tried to cover it up. Anyway, forget it. Calling an ambulance. Akane grabbed his arm. Don't overreact. Ambulances are for people who got run over. I just have a fever. He thought about calling a taxi, but for some reason, that didn't feel right either. Akane pulled the blanket over herself. I'll be fine tomorrow. Just let me sleep. Just ignore it. He sighed, ran a hand over his face, and then made a decision. If she wouldn't go to the hospital, then the hospital would go to her. Without warning, he scooped her up into his arms and started walking. What are you doing? Do you want to argue, or do you want to get better? Akane stayed quiet, gripping onto him, and for the first time in her life, she trusted that Saito knew exactly. Akane was surprised. She had never really noticed how strong Saito was. He, on the other hand, raised an eyebrow. So, you want to be a doctor? Akane crossed her arms defensively. Don't make fun of me. I would never, he replied seriously. Actually, I believe in you. If anyone can do it, it's you. Akane blinked a few times, unsure of what to say. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked at Saito, and for the first time thought, what a man. Saito, on the other hand, started to consider that maybe, just maybe, his arranged marriage wasn't such a bad idea after all. 1 week later, Akane had fully recovered. Everything went back to normal, or almost. Saito up for school. Get up already. Don't wanna, he grumbled, turning to the other side. Akane rolled her eyes. Last chance. Let me sleep, she sighed. Alright, then I'll just go grab a hot frying pan and stick it to your face. Immediately. What? Oh. So you can wake up fast. Now get up and thank me for saving your skin. He huffed, but obeyed. Go wash your face. Relax. The rain will wash it later. Akane took a deep breath. How can someone so smart be such a caveman? Saito smirked. That's no way to talk to someone you admire. Akane froze. I never said that. Yes, you did. In fact, I have it recorded on my phone, with a teasing smile. Hey, genius. Congrats on getting a perfect score again. Or misinterpretation. Saito, being a proper Japanese man, kept his composure and pretended not to notice. As soon as Himari walked away, Akane approached, arms crossed and eyes blazing. Can you stop flirting with other girls? I wasn't flirting. Oh, really? And that little smile? It's called being polite. Akane huffed. You do have a wife, in case you forgot. Saito watched her visibly annoyed expression and couldn't help but smile a little. At the end of the day, he really did have an adorable wife.